Hi, everybody, and welcome back to another special episode of Seeds of Creativity. This is going to be an interview today. Normally, it's just me talking to you on camera, but we have a special guest today. My name is Benjamin. I am the host here at the Benjamin Krudwig Creative Arts YouTube channel, and we talk about everything about fiber arts and regular art and everything that's in that umbrella. Today, we're going to be talking to Vickie Krudwig, who I know as my mother, and everyone else will know as an author, illustrator, and mixed media artist. She has had many years of experience within arts and teaching, various levels of education of teaching. So whether it's young children to the elderly, and today we'll be talking about arts and aging. We're talking about how aging affects doing art and how art affects aging. So Vickie, it's weird to call you that, but
That's okay.
that's what we're gonna do. Please introduce yourself.
Well, I'm Vickie Krudwig. I live in Westminster, Colorado, and I am an artist. And I like to believe I am a teacher that works with, most recently, the elderly and teaching classes and even beginning watercolors. And then I also do children's classes from time to time. But I work with a variety of mediums, mixed medium and different styles in my life. As I age, I find more and more exciting things to try, and just from learning from other artists my age, and then I'm also working with Parkinson's patients and teaching them art, and that has been a very rewarding experience.
Awesome. And how did you get into art? When did you first start? And what was kind of like the impetus behind you getting into art?
I was thinking about that. I think I was born an artist. And I think even as a little kid, I used to make messes on sidewalks, coloring on walls. I always had crayons and paper. My dad was really great about that. And I loved art in school, but it wasn't until I was an adult that I started attending my first art class in 1983, maybe around age 26, 27 years of age. And then by the time you have 3 kids, I didn't have time for art very much. I dabbled, but didn't take it seriously. 1989, I started doing a lot more art, illustration. I was very interested in illustration and becoming a children's author because I have children's books, ideas for kids' books just by having 3 very active and imaginative kids. And so I started writing and illustrating, joined the Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators, kept trying, and finally published my first book. And then 7 years later, published another, which was Searching for a Chipita. And I started taking art classes then because I wanted to sketch my experiences from dreams I had that led to writing her book and her biography. And I had done quick sketches in the journals that I had kept notes in. But my teacher, Homari Arkita, suggested that I start using the spiritual experiences from my writing experiences in my art. And that changed everything. My life took a big, bold turn in art. And so then I started taking classes and then just coming home and painting whatever I felt. And the color, everything changed dramatically.
Awesome. Well, we're going to get to know a little bit more about you and your work, but first I want to talk a little bit about kind of setting up this interview and setting up this conversation. So aging is inevitable. It's something that we all go through,
Yes.
and it has its own benefits as well as challenges as we age. You know, our bodies begin to fail us, our minds sometimes begin to fail us. What we can do changes over time. The elderly community is also frequently a marginalized community where they're not always respected. They don't get the same kind of resources that other people might get, particularly the middle-aged group, I guess. Not to mention, there's a lot of folks who are elderly who have disabilities, and disabled folk are also within the marginalized community. So I think it's important that we have that framework with this conversation. I am quote, an able-bodied person.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't have any disabilities, except I am colorblind. So that's
Yes.
that's one thing. But I have full use of my faculties. My body in general is healthy.
Yes. Yes.
So just putting that out there as a disclaimer, I personally am an able-bodied person with not a lot of personal experience. So that's why we were talking with Vickie today, because Vickie does have an eye impairment that affects her art, but she and I have also both worked with the elderly in an arts education setting. So that's where we're at here. So I would like to talk to you about this work that you've done. You have done a lot of work with teaching art classes to the elderly, both in kind of a general art class, and you've also worked specifically with Parkinson's patients. So
Right.
let's kind of just give me a rundown about how you started doing that.
I think,
and yeah.
Beg your pardon.
Yeah.
Sorry. For me, my catalyst came when you left home, my last child, and I'd had surgery and then came home and found the room empty, you were gone, and I plunged into depression. And I had to be readmitted to a hospital because I had a complication from my surgery. And so I was in bed and very distraught and asked for a chaplain. And she came and talked to me, and I didn't know what was wrong with me. I had no idea why I was so depressed and couldn't quit crying. And so she talked to me about aging. And of course, I was hitting the 55 plus mark. And my kids have always been important to me in my life, and having an, you have a sense of purpose then and place. So that was gone. And so she told me about a book by Joan Chittister, talking about the other half of life, what to do when you're aging. And then I also read a book from my daughter's recommendation called In the Arms of Elders, which was about elders and about the three afflictions, which is loneliness, which is a sense of purpose, purposelessness, how to say that quite, and just having a sense of needing something to have meaning. They needed some meaning in their lives. And so these are the things that I saw when I went to my place of business. I started out as a receptionist and then got to meet over 300 residents from age 65 on the way up to 101. And I had a lady walk in one day after I shortly became a director there for resident life on campus. And she told me, this is all there is. This is all there is in life. I'm going to just die here. And that disturbed me. So it made me more determined to get started with what we call Life Connect University at work. And we started adult lifelong learning. It's not a new concept. A lot of places were using it. A lot of colleges were setting up adult education. But I wanted to do this with elders. And at first people were just like, no one's going to come, that kind of thing. There were the naysayers. But we started with 10 classes, everything from archaeology, which a gentleman brought in fossils and all kinds of, I guess it was paleontology. And we had all kinds of art classes, beginning watercolor, which I taught. And, it was amazing. The response, they were starving for this connection. And it brought people out of their apartments instead of watching TV and shopping the shopping channel, QVC or whatever it was. And it took us all by surprise. And so then, 6 months later, we started our fall session, and it just grew and grew and grew. For 6 years, 5 years, we had Life Connect University. And this is when I invited you to come in and teach weaving. The weaving class to me was fascinating because you, Benjamin, started working with residents that didn't talk to each other. They were from different parts of the building. Some lived out in the garden homes. Some lived in the different apartment complexes away from each other. And they were kind of not standoffish, but just sort of apart. They had their cliques. And so when you came in and started teaching weaving, 2 or 3 of these persons had cancer and were struggling with depression. And so when you came in and they started weaving, and the quality of the weaving and the excitement changed everything. They started meeting. I get chills talking about it to this day.
I've gotten them right now.
Because it gave them a sense of purpose. It gave them a place to go to socialize.
Yeah.
And it was really awesome. And at the
Yeah.
same time you were teaching, I was downstairs working with Parkinson's patients. So, you know, it's just a feeling that you can't describe when you see the joy and the sense of completion that they have when they're in there creating something beautiful.
Yeah.
You know,
when I was teaching, because I taught, was that 3 or 4 sessions by the end?
3.
Yeah, so I taught 3 sessions of about 12-week-long classes, or 6-week-long classes.
Yes.
And what was fascinating to me, first and foremost, was I felt intimidated teaching adults. I'm used to teaching anyone from the age of like 20 up to probably about mid-50s. I was teaching weaving already to about that age group. I did some work with kids in special situations. But for this one, I was coming into a community of 8 people initially, and then I think we ended with about 11 students.
Yes.
With the weaving course at least. And that first 10 minutes, I realized that I was just as nervous as they were. And they were nervous about learning something new, you know, in their 80s and 90s.
Yes.
And having that, it's very vulnerable to learn something new in general, but especially as an adult.
Oh, sure. Absolutely.
And I noticed such a huge blossoming of activity, of discussion, of mood changes for a few of my students where they were very uptight.
We did too.
And
our
stressed.
Staff and our staff and our directors and medical personnel noticed it.
Yeah, there was a big benefit there. But for me, I also learned a lot from them. I got to ask them questions about their lives and their stories and such. And, you know, that in and of itself was worth it. You mentioned that you work with Parkinson's patients, or Parkinson's people. They're not really patients. And you have a program called PEACE, right? That's what it's called?
Right. It's the acronym.
That's the acronym.
It's Parkinson's Exploring Art and Creative Expression. And so I like to tell people, give peace a chance. But that class started when we did have our first Life Connect University. And one of my residents was going downhill quite a bit with Parkinson's. And he was a photographer and a hiker, but all those things that he used to do couldn't do anymore. And he stopped me in the hall one day and he said, you know, when you teach classes, it would be nice if you know of anybody that could teach us watercolor. It would be wonderful because my doctor would like me to try some kind of art class for my small motor skills, my tremors. And that scared me, but I spoke up immediately and said, I can do it. And so we added one more class at the last minute at Covenant Village of Colorado, now Covenant Living of Colorado. And it was the PEACE art class. And we started out with 2 people. They came and I was a wreck because I didn't know much about Parkinson's. I didn't know much about how to adapt things for equipment. I didn't know what to expect. And so the first 2 people that showed up came in with terrible tremors, but it was an amazing class. We did just brush. We just talked about brushes and paint. So we got a small grant and we put together all the supplies. I had the boards taped up. So all they had to do is put their brush into the paint palette, into water, paint palette, and onto the paper. And it was kind of funny because one of my guys kept saying, well, I keep jabbing the paper. I keep having this dab constantly. And I said, well, you know how long artists take to get that technique down. And we both had a good laugh about it, but we kept the class going. It wasn't just 6 weeks. It evolved into 5 years. But the thing we noticed was when I just start with basic lessons, you know, things that I've explored. I would give them a drawing to transfer. Then we would talk about color. We would talk about warm and cool color. We would talk about techniques. And then I would encourage them to add their own little flair to it. And I always put music on. I was in a room that we had music, so I put very relaxing kind of gelling out, or what do they call that? We would just kind of enjoy the music and take deep breaths when they came in. We did, you know, very specific things to calm the body down. And then when they started painting, I noticed that the tremors some cases almost ceased completely. They were just so still. And you'd see a very little bit of motor movement like this in the hand or like this, but nothing like they were when they came in. And this class just kept getting recognized. Parkinson's of the Rockies heard about it. We've been doing demonstrations until COVID, until I had to quit my job because of my vision impairment. But it's probably, if I had anything in my life that gave me super, super meaning, was this Parkinson's group and working with this group and working with aging, teaching them art. This is what it's about. It's about what Joan Chittister is talking about, is that we all have purpose and place after we start aging, but it's not the end of the road. In some cases, it's just the beginning.
Yeah, I mean, I think, and likewise, we both found some of our students really took to the arts that they, whatever they were doing. I had quite a number of very accomplished weavers by the end of my 18-week stint there.
Yes.
And what was really remarkable for me was to see, I saw a similar thing, because a couple of my students also had physical impairments of some sort.
Right.
So,
right. Oh, yeah.
And I felt the best thing for me as a teacher. So if there are teachers out there who are wondering how you can, challenge yourself to learn how to teach elderly folk, or if you are getting thrust into a position where this is going to happen, but this goes for anybody, any age group, whatever. The best thing that I learned is to meet them where they're at.
Exactly.
So whatever their ability is, whatever their function is, whatever their interest level is, because some of them were there for some reason, and then they ended up kind of liking it. But it was always about okay, maybe, because weaving, for those of you who might not know, it's a very dexterous craft.
Yes, yes.
It's a lot of handwork, a lot of fine motor skills necessary. And some of the tools used are easier than others to hold. So if people have grip issues or tremors, I learned to work with them and figure out, well, maybe we can put something on here that it's a little bit easier to hold, or just don't use that tool. Use something else, we'll figure it out. And getting them to still have that sense of accomplishment. And personally, I feel like it also gave them less shame.
Absolutely.
With whatever it is that they're working with and dealing with.
I think that we come from society that a lot of artists, and I hope that those that are out there listening that have what we call dormant talent, and wisdom that they've been hiding away because they didn't feel it was good enough to do anything with it. For me, it's the same thing, Ben. I had to, in fact, some of your residents that you were working with, some of the residents you were working with had some beginnings of dementia. And I thought, how are they going to work this? I don't know how they're going to do this. But those are the ones that actually had really incredible weavings, and they weren't intimidated. And then after you left, they started a program called Dreamweavers.
Yeah.
And they met every week, to weave and just visit. And it was awesome. They opened up the creative arts room, and it was just magical to watch them every Friday go in and work together and be called the Dreamweavers.
Yeah.
And I think we have a lot of people that go in there and they think they need to be perfect. There's the old school, you got to have it a certain way. And I know when I was starting to share my art for the first few times, I was petrified. And I had a teacher in 1983. I was doing this tiny little drawing. It was my first art class. And I played it safe by getting a really tiny sketch pad and tiny pencils. And I was hiding it. And she asked me what I was doing. And I said, well, I'm drawing. And she said, no. And she told everybody to leave the table. And she got out this huge piece of paper that was maybe 3 feet by 2 feet and laid it. And she said, I want you to fill this entire paper. And I thought I would die. But she said, it's not about perfection. It's about, being bold and brave and putting yourself out on the paper. And that's Barbara Presscorn. And she changed my life at Front Range Community College. And then Homari Aikita. they changed my perception about what art is and about the perfection. Anything that we try, whether it's weaving, writing, poetry, rock art, it doesn't matter. To me, it's the process. And this is what I tell the Parkinson's group. It's about the process. It's, to me, and I close my eyes when I say this because I feel it. When I'm dipping a paintbrush into water, mm-hmm. and then I go into the pigment that's ground from the earth, mm-hmm. and then I put it across paper and I'm listening to music, it becomes this absolute Zen-like, full body spiritual experience for me. And I know for the persons in the art class. And I always tell them, throw out your inner critic. I had a sign at my front back door, right at the door of the classroom. And it was this ugly little monster. And I said, please stop here. Please leave your inner critic at the door.
Yep.
But I wanted them to know that what they do at their age and taking their life experiences and their children, and some of this stuff has been emotional. Sometimes it's about the death of a loved one, processing a child's death, processing their Parkinson's. That was the hard one, because it makes, and even my vision impairment. When you're trying to do dots on canvas, like in my paintings here, I have to, the one eye's just closed. And so I don't have the depth perception and I get aggravated. And I know that my Parkinson's persons would get aggravated when they couldn't get a line to be still. Yeah. And, like you say, you learn as you're going, and if we're creative brains, we can use those creative brains to come up with ways to adapt equipment. So paintbrushes, we wrapped big fat sponges around them and then tape so that Kurt could hold the brush much easier. I bought rubber pencil holder things for it. I bought fat brushes, short brushes, sponges to paint with. And then just from the classes I took at Memories in the Making, because I did teach Memories in the Making for persons with Alzheimer's. And they taught us to guide them with a finger point, because sometimes some of my Parkinson's persons have a cognitive thing here that what they're seeing here doesn't register here. And so I'll tell them to go left with a line and they're going in the other direction. So I had to settle into that this is okay. It's okay. So I think that that's the beautiful thing about working with aging adults.
Yeah, I believe, I think one of the benefits that art has for the aging mind in particular is that you do need to have a certain sense of neuroplasticity to learn something new. And I think a lot of us get told as we're growing up that your brain gets less plastic as you age. And that's true, but it doesn't stop being plastic. Right. It slows down a little bit, but it doesn't stop being plastic. And you can always learn something new. And I found the students that I did have that had not early onset, but had Alzheimer's or dementia, those early signs of it. I did notice a marked change in their personality once they started showing up to class more often and actually doing the work, because I felt a lot of them were far more alert towards the end of the course than they were at the beginning of the course. The social interaction keeps the brain plastic. The learning something new keeps the brain plastic. And on the flip side of that, Parkinson's and other conditions are neuromuscular conditions. And so there is a brain-body connection that if you can calm the brain down and calm the body down, it works in tandem. And while it doesn't make the Parkinson's go away, and it shouldn't really be about that. It's all about accepting where you're at and loving where you're at, who you are, what you can do. Yeah,
I agree with you totally. And I am big on color theory. I think that, and this whole processing, because when I worked in that facility, I had no idea I'd be getting to teach art. I had no idea. It was a dream of mine to share my love of art with somebody, but I had no idea that I'd be going to the assisted living, teaching people in wheelchairs and Parkinson's. One of my Parkinson's gentlemen, there's so many kinds of Parkinson's disease and dementia. And one is Lewy body, which comes in with Parkinson's, and it makes them hallucinate. But we all developed such a great sense of humor about everything. And when I was going through my medical situation, doctors thought I had what they call supranuclear palsy, which is a deadly neural disease. And it scared the hell out of me. There's no other way to say it. It scared the hell out of me. And I came back to work that day, and I'm telling my Parkinson's group, and I expected them to all feel terribly sorry for me. And the first thing they said was, well, welcome to the club. And we all laughed our heads off. And for some reason, it was the most comforting thing anybody could have said to me. And of course, it wasn't Parkinson's. We're still trying to figure it all out. The sense of humor that they had, because they've been through a lot. They've been through medication changes. Some days I would have a person come in laughing their head off or crying, or they just couldn't even get out of bed that morning because the medication affected them in a certain way. To me, the saddest thing about aging is a person that sits in a chair by a window or watching TV all day long and not be engaged in life, missing life.
Yeah.
And I think if I did anything, it wasn't the income that I could bring in for classes. Well, I didn't charge for our classes at all, and neither did, Covenant Village. We didn't believe we should. We opened them to the public.
Yeah.
We felt that all elders should have the equal opportunity to learn and to engage in life and to keep learning and to meet people in their communities and the greater community. I think this generation was slower moving. We're at a breakneck speed these days.
Yeah.
And so even older adults like me think we've got to prove something and go out there and weight lift and ride bikes. And I'm none of those, by the way. My last bike riding, I ended up in the mud because of the vision. But, we try to go 1,000 miles a minute, and just art stills me. Art has kept me going through COVID. I've been able to come down to my studio, and I'm blessed to have a studio.
Yeah.
But our residents could do art. You can come to a quiet place and be still. Yeah. And hear yourself think. Remember things. Remember beauty. So I think I don't think we're ever too old to learn. No. I don't. I think you can learn. In fact, I told that to the residents. Said this is all there is. I said, you can learn and you can have something to give somebody else by just showing up to class. And I said, I believe we give until we take our last breath.
Yeah.
We have something to offer. And I think my dad, as your grandfather, was a great example. He painted until 2 weeks before he died of cancer, colon cancer. And his paintings got more and more spiritual, more colorful, very ethereal looking. I think he was going in and out of some sort of a spiritual thing.
Sure.
Until he could not hold a paintbrush, but he showed up every night at his little table to paint until he just couldn't sit up anymore. And I hope I'm like that. I hope I can just paint and paint and paint, and Mark or whoever has to clean out the house will find all these paintings tucked everywhere.
I'm okay with that.
Well, and our residents, their families are always amazed at the art that their parents did. They're shocked.
Yeah.
You did this? Oh my gosh. We've done art shows with our Parkinson's group. We did it at the Colorado Ballet. We actually displayed their art, put it in frames so that they know that their work is worthy of frame and matting. These residents get to showcase this stuff, and it's thrilling for them.
So kind of bringing this on a more personal note, you have had your own personal experiences with changing abilities. I won't out your age for you.
You can, it's okay.
But,
I'm proud of
you're
it.
in your 60s.
64.
And heck, I'm in my 30s and I'm feeling a difference in my body. So my joints are more achy now, and it means that I can't do the fine work that I used to as long as I used to. So figuring out how to mitigate that has been fun recently. But if you could tell us a little bit about your what your ailment is, or what your impairment, whatever you want to call it, because I know that you're still figuring that out.
Right.
You're on that journey as well.
Oh, yes.
And then
perpetual.
Yeah.
Well, I think in 2005, I was taking art classes, of course, and then we lost two members of our family, your grandparents, just within short months of each other. And I was at a grocery store picking up groceries for your grandfather. And I looked up and all the shelves were tilted at almost a 90-degree angle and doubled. And it was just so, it looked like a Picasso painting that I was standing in. And I thought, my God, I'm having a stroke, you know. It was terrifying. And so I went to the eye doctor and they said something about my eye muscles and they put me in prisms and it cleared it up. 6 months later, I started having problems. So every 6 months I was getting new prisms, new glasses, just kept going and going. And then I started to have falls. My balance was terrible. They sent me to a neurologist thinking I had a brain tumor or multiple sclerosis. Gosh, they named all these delightful things that were terrifying. And, you know, MRI showed that my brain was okay, that I didn't have Alzheimer's or anything. You know, I was scared. I really did not know. I thought there might be holes in my brain or a big tumor. So I went through this up and down and I still was doing art, but I had to quit some of my art classes because I could not see well. And I was getting physically ill. And, you know, you've had to drive me home a couple times after I was working on my writing at the office and working on design for a book. I'd get so sick and vertigo from using the eyes that I'd have to lay on the carpet until it settled and then have you drive me home. And so we started going, this is when we started hitting all the specialists at Kaiser, going back and forth. Had my first eye surgery in 2013. And they thought they could get rid of they thought it had to do with either Graves' disease or something like that, or myasthenia gravis. Did the surgery. I was so excited thinking I wouldn't have to use prisms because they were bad in itself. And I kept going around them. My eyes would adapt and then go bad. So the doctor said, sorry, it didn't work. You're worse. So then for 3 or 4 years after that, I just had to live with horrendous eye pain, stopped me in my tracks. Some days I couldn't even focus on a painting or a paintbrush.
Yeah.
Just taking a line would make me sick. And then 2017, they suggested I try again with surgery after going to the highest, you know, prisms that they offered at the time. So I did, and I went to the doctor thinking I'd get out of prisms. Same story. You're lucky they're making them even stronger. But my eye and my brain, for some reason, were going through the prisms and they weren't working. So now this eye is totally and permanently occluded with a frosted lens. They're going to be making it even stronger now because I'm extremely sensitive to light there, which is interesting when you're trying to paint. You've got a bright light. I get very sick and headachy. I don't want to complain too much, but that's what my life is right now.
Yeah.
As a result of all this eye stuff, when I have these Picasso moments, I step out into thin air thinking that there are stairs and things there. And so I've had some really serious falls, injured myself, my body's paying for it, reaping the benefits of it. Yeah. And so I got really fearful and wanted to stay home a lot, didn't want to get out. I slowed down a little bit on art, but not a lot. But I had to rethink my artwork. I had to rethink about what I'm capable of. And I was going to give up my dot paintings and pattern paintings, but I just had to readapt. I had to find ways to do it. And I figured now if I double up over them, it's not a bad deal. I'll just paint twice as fast if I'm having double vision. You know? I don't
think double vision adds.
It doesn't work that way.
How many arms you have.
Yes.
But,
yeah. But I do have depression days. I have days where I'm really down in the dumps and I don't feel like doing anything. I'd rather sleep all day or turn a movie on and not do anything. Or I don't feel like walking, but I'm trying to make myself, or actually not make, but encourage myself. Say, you know, this would be good for you to get out in the sunshine today. You can wear a hat and block the light. You know, I'm trying to do things every day that are positive for me. And even if it's if I paint 5 dots and then go back upstairs, it's okay. I haven't been down in my studio for 6 weeks because the eyes were so messed up again. They just had that thing. But gosh, when I came back down, I started working on my waterfall painting because there's not a lot of fine detail. I could do more of an impressionist. Could be my new style is impressionism. I understand that Monet had vision problems. A lot of these famous artists did. Dale Chihuly is one of my favorite glass artists, and he's got one eye and a patch.
Yep.
I just don't do well with patches. I try to snap my other eye out with those. But I can't feel sorry for myself. I do, but I give myself 5 minutes to cry or whatever I need to do, or write it in a journal. And then when that 5 minutes over, I get moving. I get back to my artwork. I sketch. And if I can only do 2 minutes or 3, that's the way it is. But I don't want to give up. I don't want to say I can't do this anymore.
Right. Which, knowing you, you'll never give up. So.
Well, and you know what? I've gotten inspiration from my Parkinson's residents and the residents in Covenant Village that showed up every time for your class, and they couldn't see. They had degenerative eye diseases, but they're still going strong, and they're still, they just keep living, and they keep giving, and they keep integrating into the world around them.
Right.
And that, what greater gift can you get from teaching a class? That kind of inspiration.
Right. I mean, when you're the teacher, but then you end up learning just as much of what you teach.
Oh, if not more. I think I gained more out of it than the Parkinson's group did,
Right. That's how I feel. Like, I learned so much and was able to just glean so much from these people. Specifically, I guess, have you done to adjust your art? So I know you mentioned like you're not down there as often. Have you changed techniques? Have you had to change your setup?
We had to change the setup. My husband helped me build a studio in the basement. We had a darker basement. I've always been in dark spaces, basements. But this time he was so generous to help me build the most beautiful, well lit. I don't even have all my lights on, but you can see the light behind me. And then I have 3 nice sized natural light. I got some information from the low vision group at work. It's called Beyond Vision through the Colorado Center for the People with Disabilities. And this gal and I were working with groups of people. And so she taught me all about lighting and what kind of light bulbs to buy to improve my vision. They talked to me. I've got special glasses. These are my art glasses. No, these aren't my art glasses. Those are upstairs. But I have specific lenses for art glasses for 20 inches away. These are my screen glasses for 15 inches for the computer screen. And then I have a third pair of glasses for every day walking around. I don't read. I can't read well at all. Everything floats, and too bad I couldn't put that in a painting. But I see sometimes I might have to start Cubism. So I do. I've just started that way. I use squeeze bottles to put my dots onto the paint one at a time. And I'm also just not, I get excited if I overlap a dot, because that's my famous thing, is knocking things over and rushing my hand through my artwork. And I'm just having to calm myself down and accept for what it is. And that there's going to be some messy paintings here and there. I'm still nervous about that. My abstracts, I always thought, oh, there's a speckle on there or something. But I've been working in an abstract form where I can use rulers to help guide my hands, my eyes, big bold shapes, black, dark contrast, bright contrast, because that's one thing I learned from low vision, was using higher contrast materials. So that I could see what I'm doing instead of tiny pen and ink lines like I used to love to do.
Right.
And I don't even know what else to say, except that I do have different paint brushes, sketching, but sometimes I just hop into a painting. I just start pouring paint and then just let it happen. So I don't think I do the grids or anything like that as well, because I can't see them very well.
If things aren't lined up,
exactly.
What can you do?
So I'm more what you might call loosey-goosey artist now. And in a way, the vision impairment has given me some freedom.
Right.
I've got some freedom now to kind of explore different mediums and try to see what works, it doesn't work at the color. And I've actually liked some of my most recent paintings that you see behind me better than I've liked anything that I've done. I love my paintings, but these have been my most exciting because I can do swirls instead of a zillion dots, so I'm learning different techniques.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I mean, I think the biggest takeaway that I can really think about for this is that just because, we're faced with challenges, or we are faced with the inevitability of aging and the delights and pains that come with that, there's still hope. Like you can still create. You can create for the first time at the age of 90. You can.
My mom is just taking up watercolor.
Yeah.
She's 88 and she's taking up watercolor. I think that aging isn't about the end of the line.
No.
It's about a new beginning. It's about and I'm sorry, it's phooey when they say our brains can't change at an older age.
I know. Yeah. Well, it is. It is phooey.
We might be set in our ways. And we might have certain things that we do repetitively that make us feel comfortable or that we grew up with or whatever. But I do believe that we can wake up old talents that we had from when we were in our 20s and 30s, or God, when I was a kindergartner and I wanted to be an artist, we can wake that up. And 80-year-olds and 90-year-olds and 90, like Frank, can paint at 98 and just find it fascinating. Yeah. And age doesn't exist when I'm doing art.
I think that's exactly that's exactly what I would love to say, is that age doesn't exist when you're doing art, because there is a certain, it's about who you are, right? It's about the person that is creating the art, and it has nothing to do with how old they are or what their body can do so much as it's their personal point of view and their ability to create,
Right.
And for me, like, I feel like, again, the brain stops doing stuff is phooey.
Right.
So much of it is these boundaries and these walls of fear. I know, I think my internet is a little unstable, which is totally fine. It happens during.
We'll work around it.
Yep, it's quarantine. Coronavirus times. We're doing things.
Yeah.
I guess I also live in a different state, so that changes things. But it's so much about fear and the boundaries that we put in place as we're growing older, that just need to be disbanded and dispelled, because no matter what abilities you have, if you have a good teacher, if you have a supportive group, if you have the privilege of having resources in which you can have these classes, you can be creating art up until, again, like my grandfather, right up until you pass.
Well, and I think you're right. And I think that too, teachers, I've had some humdingers that were so critical, even my own family, certain family members, not my immediate families, but they were critical. And, why'd you do it this way? Why'd you do that way? Or teachers would tell me I was careless. Well, I had vision problems then. I didn't know.
Yeah.
And I also was probably an early abstract artist, really truthfully. But you have this shame that if you don't do something perfectly, like, Norman Rockwell, or you didn't do it just right, like Degas, that your work doesn't matter. And I think that that's the biggest thing when I work with residents and even children. We encourage them to find their voice through art. And even a 98-year-old needs to be able to tell a story and find their voice through art, weaving, storytelling, writing, drumming. One of my ladies was such a proper lady, but we brought in these big drums, and boy, did she love it.
Yeah.
She started attending concerts and dancing, and even she had a walker, but I said, stand and hold on to your walker and I'll just dance next to you. We could do those things because we're meant to express joy until the end. Yeah. I'd rather go like that. I don't want to sit around waiting.
No.
And I just don't think it's necessary.
Yeah.
You can use Crayola markers and a water brush, and that's what we work with Parkinson's, the first exercise. And it was just using with rulers, drawing lines, and then dropping water on it. And oh my gosh, you thought they had created the most beautiful Kandinskys ever. And it woke up art in some of these people that had always wanted to be artists. And
right.
I think it's time that elders, I hate to use the word, but older adults, mature adults, but they are elders.
Yeah, it's tough because I feel like, I don't have all the lexicon.
Right.
There's a lot of stigma surrounding aging. And I feel like it's really important for us to be able to use the words elderly. It shouldn't feel like a bad word.
I think it's
right?
a compliment, frankly.
Well, I mean, first of all, they've survived so long to get where they are now. But also, like, again, aging isn't the end, you know, and so I think to discount somebody, I think so often we infantilize the elderly. We infantilize the older generation because we assume that they can't do everything. And yes, there are things that have changed and they can't do everything, but it doesn't mean they can't, or it doesn't mean that they can only do nothing.
Right. I think, you know, part of my book projects that I worked on were with the Cheyenne and Arapaho tribes in Oklahoma. I also worked with the Ute tribes of Colorado, working on Chipeta's biography. And one of the things that stayed with me, because I used to be afraid of aging, I was afraid of it. And then when 50 hit and you left home, I thought, oh my word, what am I going to do with my life? You know, I was scared. I was really afraid to be alone and to be with myself. And that's one thing, art is a solitary thing sometimes. You know, you want to go to your studio and paint. But the elders would come to our interview meetings. And I realized then that there was a lot of respect for elders because they carried the stories of the histories forward, histories that I don't even know my family genealogy, but they had their stories from the beginning of time. They had their creation stories, and the beadwork, the artwork, the paintings, the ledger art, all of those things spoke to me. Even rock art from 10,000, 20, 30,000 years ago spoke to my heart, and a lot of it's seen in my paintings. But elders, you go through you go through childhood, you're raising children, you're getting married, and then you start raising families. And when your children are old enough to leave, you're back to being an older woman in the tribe or whatever. You become the storyteller, the person that remembers the family history through storytelling and passing that, you know, lessons down. And so there was a great respect for that. And you could feel it, and the tribes still take very good care of their elders. They've got special programs, health programs, centers for them. They provide meals. They listen to their stories. They're engaging them into this classroom to get their histories to the kids. And I think that's what art is, you know. Even an aging artist has something to share with somebody younger.
Of course.
Enter, you know.
Yeah. Definitely.
I think that's what my dream is to break the barriers between generations. And that's what we were doing at Covenant. As we were breaking, we had young people come in and teaching, such as you. You were probably one of our youngest.
I think I might have been your youngest. But...
yeah, but they loved it. They loved the fact you were handsome too.
I did not pay her to say that. Just
no, she didn't.
For those of you watching.
I'll take your quarter later. But it's just this engagement between the generations, and that's something we've lost. In some places, some cultures, it's very strong, and I hope that we turn it around. I really do.
Yeah, I hope so. I think that's an important thing that I'm even still trying to work on and be aware of, because I think it's so easy to kind of get stuck in a bubble, right?
Right. Yes, it is.
So one thing that I would like to ask is part of, in general, like making things more equitable and accessible for anybody in a marginalized community is holding companies accountable and holding pretty much like creating opportunities.
I agree.
Using our privilege to create opportunities. If you could implore or shout out to art supply companies or resident living places, you know, whatever it is that you want to talk about, what advice would you give these people, or what would you ask for, having now seen the struggles of your students and your own personal struggles? What would make things easier for you?
I believe, because I've asked for donations from companies. Some have been great. You know, they'll pitch right in. But I have found that some of the bigger box stores and big chains are more geared to elementary school children, younger people, you know, tennis team, wherever they can get their publicity and good advertising. And so when I've asked for certain things like art supplies, paper, things that I don't think would cost a lot. And I'm not bitter about it because I'm not a business owner, that has to do this. But I do find when I've looked for different donations that the anything that has to do with the retirement community, when they find out it's a retirement community or something, they have a tendency to back off and say, I'm sorry, we do to young people, And I think a lot of businesses have this mindset that they really aren't interested in that stuff. And, they're at the end of their rope, whatever. And so it disappoints me. It makes me sad because their donation would make such an impact on programming and give persons a quality of life. And, these big box stores, they've made their income off of elders who go there and buy their goods constantly. And so I've had that disappointment. I'm meeting with a group called, I just met, his name is Mo, and he is working with a group, his own nonprofit now called the Unsteady Hand. And it is about reaching out to persons with, Parkinson's and motor neuron and raising funds so that they can do creative arts programming. Because just because you have vision impact that you can't see, there are artists that are blind, legally blind, that they're doing art. I don't intend to quit art. Even if I lost my vision, I would bend wire or do something to make art. And I think that a lot of these organizations, there's some very good ones out there trying to help. Parkinson's of the Rockies, the Low Vision Group, the Beyond Vision with the, for us, it's the Colorado Center for People with Disabilities. There's so many different groups, but to try and get a business to donate art supplies or a pair of scissors has been somewhat disappointing and discouraging. And so I can see that happening in different areas, different national. I think it is an unequal thing for kids in school districts. When I was a children's author, and I'd go to these schools in poor areas where 70-80% of the kids were on reduced lunch or free lunches, their supplies were terrible. The teachers did the best that they could, but these children did not have the same access to some of the fancy schools that I went to.
Yeah, if you, for viewers, actually, if you are interested in that topic, I have 2 articles on artshelp.net that are related to this. One of them is access to arts education in underserved communities, and that focuses on the racial disparity as well as the economic disparity between different school districts and their access to arts education. So check that one out. And then actually my article on how art teachers have had to adjust during coronavirus, during quarantine over the last year, what they've had to do and the access that they have to supplies, it's an economic disparity. So that's a very real thing. So it's not surprising at all that you've seen that as well, but I'll link both of those articles as well in the description below.
Well, and 2 Zoom listeners, or whatever we call this, YouTube. It'll
be YouTube.
A lot of times people get art supplies for gifts, and they tuck them away in a closet. And then when people are, doing estate sales and they find all these art supplies and brushes, and it'd be great if they would donate those to a school that needs it, or even just give them cash or go buy a bunch of scissors and donate it, markers.
Or donate it to your local retirement
because
facility.
Art can turn a person around. Art can turn a child that is going in a wrong direction around. I've seen it over and over. I've done workshops or met young ladies in prison in a detention center. And we talked about poetry and living their life through words and images. And when I offered talked about doing an art program, they looked at me like I was nuts. And this is the thing that makes me sad because we've got it wrong. I think that we need to share even some of the older adult communities. There are a lot of poor ones that don't have quite the facilities that I worked in. Ours was gorgeous.
I think that's a common misconception surrounding retirement facilities, elderly communities, whatever, assisted living communities, skilled nursing facilities. Like there's a lot out there that sure, they have money, they have programming, they have resources. But there's also just as many, if not more, out there in the world,
Right.
especially in the United States. Our healthcare system is a mess, and it's not it does not benefit the elderly. It just doesn't. And so if you do live near one, call and see if they have a program that needs supplies and art.
Crafting supplies, yarn.
Crafting, yarn, paint,
for
paper.
Your weaving classes, those things make a difference. And we don't need to hold on to everything in life. I've taken my art supplies that I couldn't use because of my vision and donated it to a student that was just starting out, a single mom.
Before I moved, I donated a lot of my yarn.
Well, they were weaving with it, and I think there's enough for everybody to share.
Always.
And that we just need to be more generous, because the generosity of giving, and businesses too. I hope they're listening, because
I hope so too.
You've got 5 sheets of watercolor paper that you could donate. We split those up into 4, and that puts 20 pieces of paper together for a Parkinson's art class. So 5 sheets of regular watercolor divided into 4, that provides paper for 3 or 4 classes. And I'm not talking cheap, super cheap stuff. I'm talking about some fairly decent quality, so that the art has quality and as well. Also, and the Alzheimer's Association, those supplies they use are beautiful, and they do art shows and raise fund with their art auctions. And the best thing is it gives even a person with Alzheimer's, even if they don't remember coming to class or whether they painted something or not, it gives them joy.
Yeah, even in the moment. And I think that's important to think about, is whether or not there is a physical benefit or a monetary benefit or anything. If there's even that little bit of, they were able to spend 2.5 hours with a group of people having a good time and expressing themselves. Like, I would have some students show up to class, weave 2 rows, and 2.5 hours later, like, that's all they did. But they had a good time. We were able to have a good conversation. We would laugh. We would sometimes cry. Like, it just would depend on what's going on in the world. I guess to kind of almost wrap up, my biggest message, I think, that I would have is that everybody's point of view matters. You are valid. Whether you are an infant or you are 107 or 8, whatever the record is these days, your point of view is valid. You especially those of you in a marginalized community, and some of you are hit harder than others by being of color, by being LGBTQIA+, by being, underprivileged, by whatever it is that is so often othering for you. You are valid. And if you are ever in a situation where that you're going up against that, there are advocacy groups out there.
Absolutely.
There are folks who can help get you in touch with the right program, but also see if there are people who will help raise their voice for you. If you are in a community at a retirement home, and you don't have an art program.
Well, and I think these art programs
together.
Excuse me.
No, you're fine.
Art programs. The one word that I wrote in my office one day on the marker whiteboard, just in big block letters, because I was thinking about it, and it's about empowerment.
Yes.
And that crosses all lines. Age, it crosses all age barriers. It crosses all race barriers. The arts are equalizers.
They can be.
They can be, but we just need, I would just love for people to be generous and to share their supplies. Reach out. If you're an artist, then get busy and teach an hour a week, because when I'm working with these Parkinson's groups, it's incredible. And now COVID, it's been different, but
It has, yeah.
I'm anxious to get back out and work with my Parkinson's groups because they come in and they're afraid, they're depressed, they're, they can't even hold a pencil some days, but the music goes on and they slow down. And even if they're watching everybody else, there's joy. I just believe it. I know so.
Yeah. Well, and I would like to encourage anybody, and I know this is going to come across as a little bit preachy, but that's who if I lose followers for this, so be it. I don't care anymore. I'm done shutting up. What I would say is you sitting at the computer listening to this right now or watching this right now, because this will not make it into the article, I'm sure.
Right.
Because it's not an opinion piece. My video can be an opinion piece.
Right.
So if you sit where you're sitting now and just look at your privilege, whatever it is that you do have, ask yourself what it is that you can do to help feasibly. Like, I can give time. I can give education. I can write. Those are my skills. I have that set of skills.
Right.
And yes, COVID has put a huge damper on a lot of things. Unfortunately, it's just the way we are. And a lot of communities, especially of elders, are getting hit really hard with that as well. So if you can reach out to your local community and just see what do they need, and where does that overlap happen with your skills and tools and ability to give? That's all I would ask my audience and the people watching this.
Right.
And think about what you can do as an individual to help equalize things, because like I've written about, like I've spoken about, there is a great inequity in the world right now, especially in the United States. And in the arts, there's also a lot of problems there that I'm trying to work through and educate people on, because arts education is not always easily accessible for people. In general, art history is whitewashed and very male-centric. Right. So if you're like a white dude from the 1800s, yeah, you're in that history book. Right. But it's, I'm trying to help change that.
Right.
And adjust that. And yes, it's coming from a cis white dude here. But I have that privilege to use my voice and to use my platform to help make a change for those who don't have that voice and that platform.
And I think we're all called.
We're all called, yes.
Either participate and to liberate others, to give them a freedom of expression like we have had, and been blessed with. And I think we have choices. And I can remember, and this is one of my closing statements, is my dear friend Frank, after 24 years of friendship, passed away from COVID this year. And I was shocked, or actually last year. And he's the one that hired me to do his first illustrations book. I always wanted to be an illustrator, and he hired me. And when I started painting and wanting to share my work at this older age, I said, I don't know, I'm kind of nervous about this. And he said, well, you go ahead and you hide your art. You hide your gifts from people. And he said, you rob the world of your gifts. And that's what happens if we don't reach out and share what we know and what we love, singing, tap dance, or whatever. We rob the world of the gift and of a future of creativity. Yeah. And so I think this whole, it's just, I just think there needs to be a revolution for older adults, for aging adults, to say, hell no, I'm not going to be a wussy and a sissy. I'm going to paint. I'm going to create and express myself. And, Iris Apple's wonderful. I mean, I
love her.
I just don't want to grow old without a sense of purpose or place. I want to keep giving as long as I can. Hell, I might even do my hair purple. It looks kind of blue in the light.
Do it.
But we just need to embrace creativity at any age.
Yeah.
And enjoy it and live it and pick up a paintbrush, even if we have the tremors or bad eyes, or we've got polio. Some of my residents had polio from back in the 50s, or arthritis. Whatever it is, just keep trying. Keep doing something to move forward in life and to switch that joy center on in the brain.
Yeah. And if you are not aging, well, it sounds weird, like you're a vampire or something.
That's not good if they're
if
not
you're not aging.
That's a whole different story.
Completely different story.
R.I.P.
If you are not in the elderly community and you see a need somewhere, do try to be the voice for that community, because often, again, they are not listened to. So you may need to be the advocate for that group. And I think it's really important to fight that good fight. I would like to say thank you for showing up to this, and thank you for having this candid conversation that is personal.
And I'm not done yet. I'm 64. No. My dad was paying till 88, so I figure I've got another 24, 25 years.
At least.
And then some. I always loved Grandma Moses, because she was 101 and painting. And heck yeah, that's where I'm going.
Definitely.
And, it's exciting. And I thank you for the opportunity to do this.
Yeah, of course.
Parkinson's, check your local Parkinson's organizations. If you have low vision, check any kind of group that does deal with the Centers for Blind Persons or persons with low vision. Find assistance, find grants. There's grants everywhere here and there for different groups of different cultures and stuff, and ask for help if you don't know. And those of you that write grants or good at writing, volunteer to write a grant for somebody so they can get a poor school or somebody in a different neighborhood with racial issues that can get aid. Help them out. Give them your skill. So.
Yeah, and to piggyback off of that, look not only on the national level, but also on the local level for grants, because frequently you'll find even very small community grants. Your city council might have grants available for things, your county, your state, your region, and then of course, national. There's so many resources. They're just kind of spread out. So you may need to Google.
Check your local, there's the local Optimist Club. There are Rotary clubs.
Yep, the Rotary Club.
Because they'll provide at least $400 or $500 grants sometimes. And those monies can buy a lot of art supplies.
Exactly. So I'll do my best to put as many resources as possible that are on a more national scale in the description box below, as well as in the article. That way, if you are interested in assisting or helping, you can do that. If you would like to follow Vickie on any social medias, she has her Harmony House Art Studio, which you can find her on Facebook and Instagram under that umbrella. And then her website is harmonyhousestudio.com. You can find all of her artwork there, her current exhibitions, all of that work there.
And information on the organizations that I work with, that I believe in and try to support. I may have to add about 10 more after this art.
I know, right? And if you enjoyed this video, please consider giving it a thumbs up. Please subscribe to the channel if you want more content like this. Honestly, if you don't want more content like this, sorry, I'm going to do it anyway. So feel free to unsubscribe. No, don't do it. But please, a good thumbs up and a subscription is always helpful here. If you have ideas or would like to learn more about a certain topic, please throw those in the comments below. If you personally have been affected by aging and want to talk about how you have adjusted or how you have coped with your own art, whether it's fiber arts, because I know that's a huge portion of my audience. Hello, all of you crocheters and knitters and weavers out there. If you've been affected by that, please talk about your experiences. I'd love to have a little bit of a conversation in the comments with that as well.
Sure. And if anybody has further questions, they can ask in the comment section and we can respond.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah, I'll be sure to get comments in. I check my YouTube daily, so for a while there, it was not daily. It was like every few months. Yeah, I really enjoyed this. So thank you.
I did too. I had fun.
Yeah, thank you. And
Thank you for
maybe we
asking.
can do something like this again on a different topic.
It sounds good. I loved it.
Awesome.